Welcome back to Highlander Heart. And this time, oh man, we really are going geek. We're going deep into geek. I mean, we're taking geek to a whole new level for Highlander. Before we start, now, before I tell you what we're going to be doing this month, joining me is Ewan.
Hello.
No Joe this time, I'm afraid, but we have Ewan instead, which is fantastic. And Ewan is integral to us being able to bring this to you because, how can I say this? There's not just one version of Highlander. I mean, no. To the layman, we sort of talked about this in the past. There's a couple of different versions out there and things like that. But when Ewan told me how many differences there are between different versions, I nearly fell off my chair. So. So Ewan is here to bring us the truth, and I can't wait. This is going to be fantastic. We've seen some clips of this at the recent Highlander convention online, and we saw some of the stuff there, and the differences just blew me away. It was fascinating. So, wow, Ewan, where do we start, Ewan?
Oh well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's at least 4 different versions of the first Highlander,
right?
Which is, to begin with, pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And I think when I was making up these videos, I counted something like 27 significant differences across all these different versions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I said to you earlier, I've got 41 videos sitting here ready to go.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, this is a video I prepared a while ago, just to kind of catalog the differences, and that runs for the full length of the film. So it's like a 2-hour video I've got there, and then I edited that down for someone, and then edited it down again to about 10 minutes for the convention.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there going, "Oh, this is going to be so boring for everyone." But everyone seemed to get really into it and really enjoyed it, and we got some really good reaction for that. So. Yeah, we thought we'd do it again, but go into a bit more detail this time. Take our time.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I can't wait. Right. So strap in, everybody. This is going to be, this is going to be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, the 4 versions, there's 3 main versions, and then there's kind of the mystery 4th. So there's the American version, which came out in March '86.
Right.
That was the 7th of March. That runs for 110 minutes.
Okay.
Now, a lot of the US viewers, obviously, they'll know that one quite well.
Yeah.
Although it is a bit more difficult to see these days. That's this one here.
Right.
Probably still currently the best way to get it is on the old Laserdisc. Although there have apparently been showings on Cinemax of it recently in a HD form.
Okay.
So I've not seen it myself. Apparently you've got to be in the US or Canada to see that. So if anyone's actually seen it, let us know. So that one runs for 110 minutes. And then at the other end of March '86, the 26th, in France, the film came out. Obviously dubbed into French with Christophe Lambert doing his own voice.
Yeah.
And that one runs for 112 minutes. So there's a little bit extra there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm not sure exactly when it came out first, but here in the UK, we got the international cut in the 29th on the 29th of August 1986.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what everyone knows these days.
Yeah.
And that's the internet. That runs for 116 minutes.
Okay.
In 1996, of course, in the US, they got the director's cut.
Right. Yeah.
Which is very similar to the international cut, but also very different. That's also 116 minutes. I'm a bit of a pedant when it comes to the director's cut. Often when there's a new version of Highlander coming to home video, people will say, "Oh, it's the director's cut," and everyone's like, "Yeah, it's always the director's cut." I'm like, "No, the director's cut's not been seen since the '90s." And again, Laserdisc,
Right.
director's cut. Many Americans, this was the first time they saw the extended version.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mystery one that I alluded to earlier was brought up by Kareem in one of your earlier episodes. I think it was the deleted scenes episode.
Yeah.
And that's the mysterious 70mm, which was only ever shown once at the Egyptian Theatre in Hollywood in August 2011,
Right.
and then vanished. And that one contains all the deleted scenes from the Blu-ray, but in the film with sound.
Right.
So we need to get hold of that someday.
Yeah, I
So
wish.
frustrating that it appeared and then just vanished.
Yeah.
But for more on that one, check out the earlier episode.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, okay, so I mean, we'll start off super nerdy, which is that all of them open up with completely different logos.
Yes.
So you can see there, we've got the American version in the bottom left. That's just 20th Century Fox. They just tweeted it over there. Got the French AAA one there, and for us in us in international, we've got the Canon logo there. Here we are again with the three versions being compared. So you can see we've just got our standard from the dawn of time we came intro, and that's we see that in both the international and the US versions.
Yeah.
The French version, that's just a blank screen dubbed over in French.
Okay. I guess they can be bothered to typeset the.
Yes, you say that they couldn't be bothered to retype it, but the titles are all in French. Another interesting note about the French version is that there were actually two. You could see it in two ways in France. You could go and see this version, which is dubbed into French.
Right.
Or you could go and see it subtitled.
Yes.
And if you went to see the subtitled version, you got the American version.
Right.
So I've spoken to people who saw this in France, and depending on the showing that they went, they got a different version of the film. But yeah, now let's actually get onto some footage. So the first real difference in the footage itself is the wrestling is handled slightly differently. So again, I'll show the comparison one here.
Yeah.
You can see this is all just gone. The flashback is entirely absent. And I know some US viewers actually prefer the US version of this, and I can kind of understand it, because it makes that moment when the camera pans up so much more, confusing, if you like, because you have no idea until the moment when the camera pans up from the car park that there's a connection to the past.
Right.
So some prefer that, some don't. And I'll just show that one as it appears in the US version. Yeah. So these are the theatrical versions. If we jump over to the director's cut, it's an interesting case where the audio has been completely reconstructed. So there's a lot of audio differences. I'm not going to go through all the audio differences, because that is literally every 2 seconds in the film I go, there's a change, and that gets really tedious. But the first noticeable change is during the Kill MacLeod chants as we get that first flashback, where they're there, but they're just very, very low in the mix. Whereas in the original, that's a big booming chant.
Yeah.
More noticeable, though, is their attempt to tie the director's cut into the series mythology. So we get, whenever two immortals meet, we get...
Yes, the buzz.
Which is, again, I can see the point of it. It brings it into the series mythology. They've made a couple of tweaks here and there to do that, but I don't know. I prefer the international one for that.
It's a tough one, as you say. It was primarily to make us feel like they are more connected than actually they really are, because there's a lot of difference.
Well, there is, you know, I mean, this is getting back into discussions that I think we've had in the past, where you know, that what is the quickening? You know, these days, of course, you know, in the series it developed into the thunder and lightning.
Yeah.
But really, in this one film, it's the connection between them. So the quickening became the buzz, and terms changed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it completely changed. The idea of the quickening evolved even over the movies. You know, from Highlander 2. Suddenly in Highlander 2, your run of the mill quickening was like you're winning the game,
winning the prize.
Yeah, exactly, winning the prize, and then that translated to the series where it was like that every time. Whereas, you know, I love the simplicity of the first one. You know, where you've just got a spot light over him and some wind and a little bit of electricity crackling and things like that. But it's just something very simplistic that goes back to that. One of my favorite tracks written about Highlander was the one for Highlander 3. God Took a Picture of Me. God took a picture of me. Which is based on that idea that this flash coming from above. I love that. I think it's fantastic. But there you
go. Another one that's a lot of people. This one's 50-50. Some people prefer how this is in the final film, and some people prefer how this was in the US version. But it's the infamous backflips.
Yeah.
Again, they're just missing from the US version, for better or worse.
Yes.
I think they tie in with the camera and the movement, but logically they make no sense.
No.
So here we are, we've got them coming over the bridge, just been introduced to Connor. And then we're on the battlefield.
Right.
So we've just suddenly missed
character building moments.
Yes, the whole introduction to Kate and who she is.
Well, yeah, but also just humor.
All of this has just gone.
Yeah.
For Kate.
Yeah.
So when in the original cuts, in the US theatrical cuts, when she's screaming later on that he is to be burned, people are thinking, who is she?
Yeah.
Why is she so invested in this?
Yeah.
Now we're going back over to the director's cut again for this one, which, again, it makes logical sense, but I'm just not a fan of it. That's the Kurgan when he's driving in his car.
Right.
There's something missing there, isn't there? It makes logical sense.
Yeah.
You know, the music not kicking in until he puts the tape in, but it's just such a great moment.
It is.
It feels wrong to tamper with it.
Yeah. A little bit of artistic license is okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
So that's what I mean. The director's cut has all these just minor little changes. Well, these audio changes, which make it, I think, a very different version from the international cut.
Yeah.
Talking of Kate a moment ago, the banishment scene has quite a few bits of trimmed violence. what I find interesting here is that here in the UK, we got all the, particularly the headbutts have been cut.
Yes.
And we got them all here when, I think it was particularly in the 90s in the UK, headbutts were cut out from everything.
Mm.
I think even one of the Star Wars prequels had a headbutt removed. The Matrix had to have a headbutt removed. Whereas, but just a decade earlier in the 80s, we've got the headbutts. In America, they don't.
Yeah.
And France. Now, there's an interesting little audio change in the American and French versions. So we've got the scene here. Then there's just, we get a bit of extra music. Now, I think this is part of the piece of music from the car park.
Yeah.
But it was removed. Yeah, sorry, the music was removed from the later versions.
Yeah, I guess it's quite foreboding music, and it's leading into something that's actually quite a sort of humorous scene and quite a light-hearted scene. Even when he's sharpening the sword, he's got a smile in his face. So I don't feel like we need to feel like looming dread.
It's a really odd music choice, I think.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's quite a long moment where nothing's happening. There's
it is something. Yeah,
no dialogue. So I can see someone just saying, "I'll just slap a bit of music on there." Now we're back over to the director's cut here, and we are in the underwater sequence.
Right.
You can't drown, you fool, you're immortal.
Yeah.
And there's just been a few lines removed here from the director's cut.
I'm alive.
That's it. That's all he says in this version. Whereas, in all the other versions, he says, "I can breathe."
Yeah. I guess, I can understand things like that. Specifically, the amount of times this comes up as a conversation online or something about, well, yes, but why, why is it different? Why did, how come he can breathe underwater? He can't breathe. He can't breathe. What is actually, okay, maybe don't say you can breathe.
Yeah.
Just make it simpler for everybody.
And then this one's more contentious. Again, it's with the director's cut, but it's a great moment in the film. And I think trying to tie it to the continuity of the series kind of ruins the moment a bit. So here we go. So we lose the immortal line there. MacLeod, this is the quickening.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, that was removed, I assume, because by that point, the connection, the bond between all living things was not the quickening anymore.
No, it was just having an orgasm in a storm cloud. That's basically the game.
So again, it's one of the reasons why I've never been quite a fan of the director's cut.
Mm.
And again, why I'd love to hear Joe's opinion on it.
Yeah.
Because coming from, like I say, coming from the US, this is the first time he probably saw any of this.
Yeah.
So American people probably have a very different opinion of this than I do or you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll just adjust the volume for this one. So yes, now we're back to the theatrical versions here. So there's a few trims in the tower fight. Nothing major there, just a couple of shots trimmed. However, this one's always puzzled me. I mean, what an iconic shot to cut.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That one there.
I don't know. Maybe it was, there's an element of polystyrene about the bricks in that scene, and I think, and the backdrop, and perhaps it just felt a little too much like it actually was, which was on a sound stage, with fake bricks falling and things like that, and projected stuff in the background. Maybe it was just an artistic choice to try and I don't know, just tighten it up a little bit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I know at the time there was a lot of pushback against Moquet's style.
Right.
It's very bombastic. It's often compared to a music video.
Yeah.
And I think the little bits like that were maybe cut to try and pull that down.
Yeah, which is a shame, because that's what makes it what it is.
Yeah, and I know from reading John Melville's book, there's a chapter in there about the post-production, and he talks about one of the producers. There was a very tight. They had to deliver a certain length of film, and they couldn't overrun. And he worked out, okay, we're running over 8 minutes. So if you go through and cut a frame from every shot, you can save 8 minutes. And that's the level that they were at. They had to get it down to that one way or another. So I think that's why some of those shots were maybe cut out, just to try and get it down those 8 minutes.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
And then, of course, we come to the big one that everyone always talks about. Now, again, I'll try showing the US version here first, and see if you can spot what's missing.
Would you listen to me for one moment, please?
And yeah, we've just lost 2 minutes of film there. If I go back to the comparison video here, you will see what they lost in the US. However, this is the big difference between the American version and the French version. So this is why the French version is about 2 minutes longer than the US.
Right.
We get backstory, character. So this is where Rachel's character is really explained. And we get this little moment between them.
What am I supposed to say?
Tell them I'm immortal.
A bombastic transition, and we're in World War II.
Because it opened your mind to, what about all these other? Where was he in? When this happened?
And somewhere along the way, he held an orange.
Yeah, don't.
We'll not get into that one again.
One day.
One day we'll know. We'll know what the orange scene was about. The next one is another odd audio change in the director's cut, where they randomly changed the sound of the gun, as both the Nazi and McLeod are shooting.
Right. Okay.
Hold on. So. And I just feel like it's a very flat sound effect, as opposed to the original here.
Whatever you...
Yeah.
It's a really weird change.
Yeah, it is very odd. Maybe it was more authentic. I mean, I don't know enough about guns.
Yeah, I've wondered that. I mean, over here in the UK, we know nothing about guns really. They're just guns. Whereas I know in the US, you go on IMDb and you look at the trivia or the goofs sections.
Yeah.
There's always, any action film, there's always at such and such a point there was so and so fired a certain type of gun, but it made the sound of another type of gun. So it could have been one of those instances.
That makes sense.
But
be interesting to know.
Yeah. But the whole soundtrack is like that for the director's cut. I mean, there's a scene where McLeod sheathes his sword, and it's a completely different sound effect. Anytime there's an explosion, it's slightly enhanced,
Mm.
and it's. I think they just they. It was the first time the film had been presented in surround sound,
Right.
so I think they completely rebuilt it.
Right. For that reason. Yeah.
Yeah, and then for the DVDs, for the international DVDs, and then later the Blu-ray everywhere, we got the original soundtrack again in surround sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think it was just an experiment at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And here's another very famous bit from the American cut of the film that a lot of people miss. I find it an interesting little moment, but it's here we go. Just
Yeah.
when you go.
No, I was just going to say, this was, because I love the movie so much, and I'd never seen this scene, because there was this moment that I'd never seen. I was fascinated by it, and I went over to America in '96, and I was like, right, I'm going to buy a VHS of this. And I bought the VHS. It was the director's cut, and so I got it home and I put it on, and it didn't have the scene in it. I'm like, what? And I had to get somebody to send me a copy of the VHS, so that I could see the scene. But it was so exciting to see it, because it's a flip from what the Americans. We had stuff that they'd never seen, and but for us it was Bedso spilling his coffee. That's as exciting as it got, but I was still excited.
Yeah, because the thing is, at the time, I mean, I had a similar situation where I'd never seen it. I'd heard people talking about it, and I went over to Canada to visit family, and we all the family all went out. They went to a rental store. That says how long ago it was.
Yeah,
it's probably 2002.
Okay.
And everyone was picking something. I saw the really old US Northern American VHS, where it's just a picture of McLeod in the car park.
Yeah.
Really old, the first VHS issue, really. And I rented that and sat and watched it, and it was I could barely see anything through the tape-worn static. And that was the first time I saw this. But even then, about 20 years ago now, there were no pictures of this on the internet.
Right.
So, everyone talked, I knew exactly what was in the scene. Bedso sitting in a car, burning himself with coffee.
Yeah.
But how was it framed? How was it shot? What happened?
Yeah.
There was nothing about it online. And even now, I mean, when I showed this clip at the convention recently, people in the comments just went nuts. Like, oh, it's Bedso. I've never seen this before. Or, oh, wow, I haven't seen this for 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's just such a simple little scene.
Mm.
And, but at the same time, it's just so weird.
It needs to get back in there somewhere.
It does. It's such a weird little scene. It doesn't do anything, but it's got a bit of character, and
exactly.
Yeah. Just for such a weird little scene to become such a big myth, and have all these stories about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So then we're on to the famous duel on Boston Common, where again the US version was just trimmed a little bit. it's just odd, you know, especially, you know, you can, when you know it's meant to be there, you can hear the cut and the music.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And it's just, it's another, there's not enough. It's, yeah, they obviously don't like the humor. They don't want the humor in there. It's an action movie. It has to have action. And,
Yeah.
you know, and this was one of the things that, you know, the writers that took over, you know, Wooden Script were so keen to add in, you know, to get some humor, to get some, to some lightheartedness in there, and you know, and then they just strip it all out.
It's such a shame. I mean, you know, again, as you've discussed in the deleted scenes episodes, there's so much humor that ended in, you know, even in the international version, that ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It's war against humor.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's I think that's part of why Highlander maybe still feels quite fresh today. You know, you look at your Marvel action flicks, it's a balance of action and humor.
Yes, exactly.
And, you know, that balance is really only been common since, you know, the 90s, when you started to get all the, you know, the big summer blockbusters, you know, every year. And they got that balance then. But this was 10 years prior. I think people just didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely.
Again, just a little trimmer for violence here in the US version. Poor Kirk. But it's funny because you probably got similar experience in me, where, you know, growing up in, you know, 80s, 90s, so much of the time we just got violence and gore cut right out of all our films.
Yeah.
And yet this one just bucks the trend by having it all cut out in the American version, and we got it all.
Yeah. Strange.
Yeah. And again, this one's not violence, but I know it's another odd little cut from the US one.
Forgive me. I am a worm.
So there, of course, we're missing
the
hand lick, which I think they were concerned about annoying religious audience there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty out there scene. I'm amazed that they managed to shoot that in a actual church without getting thrown out. The whole scene, really, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But it is a fantastic scene.
Yeah, I think they were very lucky that they got that location and that they managed to do what they did there.
Yes.
Quite often, I think I find, certainly within independent stuff as well, once you're in there and you've done it, it's very difficult for anybody to do anything about it. You've done it now.
Yeah.
You know, are you gonna, you know, you could kick up a fuss or whatever, but yeah, it's.
I'm sure they got paid quite well for the location. It's a stunning location.
Yeah, it is.
Again, we've got another cut that's trimming down the characterization a bit here. So we go from the Stevie Love scene, which you can't really see anything of due to the low quality of the copy I've got here, and we just cut straight from the love scene to Brenda going up the stairs.
Right.
And of course, we're missing an entire scene there. With a very startling cut that has made many of us jump, no doubt.
Can't get involved.
So I know that the script writers were very vocal about how the love story was handled. And even in the international version, they just thought it was cut down to its bare minimum.
Yeah.
Where, you know, he says, I'm immortal, they have sex, they go to the zoo, and then she gets kidnapped. And, you know, yeah, it is pretty weak. And there was a couple of extra scenes that were scripted, and one that was definitely filmed, which kind of, you know, padded it out a bit more, gave gave the story a bit more space to breathe.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But to take this scene out as well is ridiculous. I mean, I mean, just purely from an editing standpoint, cutting from the love scene to her walking up the stairs is just, I mean,
it feels like there's too much time has passed.
Yeah.
Whereas this at least feels like, well, this is probably the next day or something.
Yeah.
And, maybe the Kurgan scene is later that night or perhaps the day after.
Well, exactly. This scene sets up the fact that he sees them together, so he knows that there is a link, and so that's why he goes after her.
Yeah.
There he is.
There he is in the corner. And for years, I don't know if this was just the pan and scan VHS that I had. For years, I've never noticed that he was standing there until I think I had a taped TV version. And then when I bought the VHS, which I still have, that one, you can actually see him. And I was like, oh my God, it's the Kurgan. And that was in probably the late 90s.
Yeah. Oh,
crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, no, to be fair, it is one of those moments that you don't catch straight away necessarily. I can remember the moment where I spotted it for the first time. I was like, ooh. And of course, we talked about a little bit earlier about the addition of the buzz. That definitely in that director's cut definitely draws attention to it more because you get the crazy.
Yeah, I've been leaving out all the rest of the buzzes. Like say, I'm not going into the whole every single audio change.
But it's arguably helpful in that scene, perhaps. But I quite like the idea that it's quite subtle in the background.
Yeah. Well, of course, when you see it in widescreen, though, of course, it isn't really subtle. It's just we used to, back in ye olde days, all we had was a square picture.
Exactly.
But talking of completely losing characterization, we lose this lovely little moment. Where again, we've just lost Rachel's final lines in the film.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Russell Nash.
I mean, in the US cut, I just think they didn't know what to do with Rachel.
No.
And I think once you lose the World War II scene, her character doesn't really have anything to do in the film.
No.
So I'm actually amazed that they kept as much as they did of her.
Yeah. No, absolutely. She's ultimately just becomes a secretary. So I suppose there doesn't need to be much beyond, okay, there goes my boss. I'm not getting paid next month. That's kind of...
Yeah. Like saying, but at the same time, they have scenes like this where, it's quite an emotional scene where, they're saying goodbye after so many years. She's essentially his father. And, without any context, that scene makes no sense.
No.
And it always amazes me that they cut out this line, goodbye, Russell Nash, and not, hey, it's a kind of magic. Because that line makes no sense now. So after that, we're on to the rooftop fight, where we lose, I don't know how to describe it, we lose a chunk of the fight. It's like a subplot within the fight. So the water's come down, it's chaos, and then we get an extra little bit here where McLeod hides under the water. And then they have just a bit of a game of cat and mouse.
Yeah.
Just a bit of tension, which is, I guess it's slowed things down, perhaps.
Oh, maybe.
And then we're straight back in. So again, I think that was cut in service of the 8 minutes that they had to cut from the film. Then we cut to the other end of the fight. The Kurgan's defeated, and in the US and French versions, that's handled slightly differently with mostly just different audio and some slight trims. Odd edit to that, I feel. I mean, in the international cut, you've got that kind of howling sound effect that takes over everything.
Yeah.
And there's rushing wind. Whereas this, it's just kind of very muted, quiet. I think I use the same audio in this one, but you'll see the slight trim. Yeah, you could hear the start of that howl there.
Yeah.
And then this is one that personally I had not noticed until rather recently. And that's the fact that the final prize, Quickening, has completely different edit in the US and French versions. Well, sorry, completely different effects between the two versions.
Yes.
And for years, I'd heard people say on forums and such that for the director's cut, they went in and added special effects, added in new effects with CG. I was like, no, they didn't. And then it was only recently when someone was posting side-by-side comparisons that I started to go, oh, yeah, this does look different. So I'll just play the sequence here and see what you think. And there we are. So let's see. There you go. There's find a good screenshot. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's largely the same animation, but the exposure is different. But then there's bits like this screenshot here where they're just completely different.
Yeah, exactly. For the most part, it's almost like they turned everything up to 11.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, there are still some additional stuff.
Yeah. But it's unless you're sitting watching them side by side, the flow of it, the animation is all the same. So I just didn't notice it for years.
No.
But here, side by side, it's quite clear. So I think there was the myth for a long time that this was added by for the director's cut. But whereas it's what we had in the international cut for so many years.
Right.
And the original US version is barely seen anymore. And I can't decide which one I prefer. I mean, the international one's a bit more subtle, but at the same time, the other one I think looks, it's more intense.
Yes.
And I did once recently asked Ravi Swami, who did the storyboards, and I think worked on some of the animation about it. And he was like, oh, I didn't know there were two versions. So I've never been able to track down or find anyone who knows why there's two very different versions of it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, it's yet another question about Highlander that we may never know.
No.
They did make one change for the director's cut, however, and that's, you can see here,
Yep.
they finally took out the wires, which were always quite obvious. I mean, even on the VHS, I could see the wires.
Yeah.
There was never any hiding them.
No. It's been a long-standing joke.
Yes.
About the wires. Yeah, for sure.
And they did the best they could,
Mhm.
because I mean, he is suspended quite a significant distance from the ground. So you want something strong, but they just couldn't hide them in the final film. So they did take them out in the director's cut, but that is the only visual change in the director's cut.
Yeah, sure.
But of course, the Blu-ray uses the international cut, so the wires are back again. So there's two arguments about this. One, the wires look a bit naff. The other side, it's how the film's always looked.
Yeah. Sure.
I think if you took them out, you get a lot of vocal people complaining about revisionism.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
but they did recently put out Flash Gordon on 4K Blu-ray.
Yeah.
The director actually insisted that they removed some wires for that version. And those wires had never been seen before. It was just they went back to the original negatives, gave everything a fresh clean, and suddenly they were there.
Right, yeah.
So they took them out to try and make it match how it always had looked.
Okay.
So that's a slightly different case there.
Sure, absolutely.
But it will be interesting to see if they ever disappear again in the future. Again, there's just another little audio change in the American version. Right at the end of this scene.
I want to go home.
McLeod there after the whole prize, just saying, "I want to go home." And just for a little bit of fun, same thing in French.
Je veux rentrer chez moi.
Just Christophe doing his own lines there. Both Highlander 1 and 2, he got to dub himself, which must have been an interesting experience.
Yeah, I bet, yeah. Pretty cool.
I do have the French DVD of Highlander 3. I should check and see if he dubs himself again there.
Yeah.
And that's the last of the big changes. I know a lot of people, again, I hear that the loss of that little moment lamented quite often online.
Yeah. Well, it's important. I mean, that's where he ends up, in that final
Yeah.
scene. It makes sense. So, yeah.
And then to bring us back around to where we started, of course, each version has completely different credits. So you can see there, the whole timing of it, the actual text.
Yeah.
Again, in the French one, we've got completely French credits.
Mm-hmm.
So they've all been completely redone. The international version, we've got lowercase, and the US version, we've got uppercase. So, it just ties it all together.
Yeah.
And another interesting twist to the story of the French cut is that Studio Canal has released something close to it on DVD in France. These French DVD versions appear to try to use the international cut to recreate the French version. However, the extra wrestling footage, the bedso shot, and the French language opening titles are all missing. So now we have two French versions.
But yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's geeky. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you got to love this stuff to really appreciate that. But we do, and that's absolutely fun. But yeah, fascinating for somebody who really just felt like there were two two versions in my head. There was an American one, and then there was a British one. And yes, there was a director's cut that was kind of a little bit of both. But it's amazing to see all those tiny little differences and things that really, I mean, what would be your perfect version? I mean, what would you pick and choose from? If you got a kind of I don't know what your kind of your control version of the movie is, but what would you, for the bits that have been missing and the bits that have been added, what would you kind of like to sort of see in the perfect version?
I mean, I think the international cut is pretty much the perfect version out of what we have.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I want to see the 70mm cut.
Oh, well, God.
You know, all those deleted scenes with audio.
Yes.
And there's still a lot of question marks about little edits in that. You know, does it have the bedso scene?
Yeah.
It doesn't. You know, from what we've seen, you know, what has been released on the Blu-ray, it doesn't look like it's got the speech from Ramirez at the very end.
Right.
You know, but talking to Cream, he remembers the speech at the end. So
Right.
again, is that another subtle change between what's on the Blu-ray and what's, and you know, but yeah, I want to see the bedso scene back in. It's a very small moment, but it adds a bit of character, and especially if you know a bit of, if you've gone through and read the script, which, you know, I know we both have because we're nerds, but again, going back to the deleted scenes episode, you were talking about, there's a whole scene where Bedso ends up in a pub with McLeod and Castigier, and they just get absolutely wasted. And in the script, that happens before the dinner date with Brenda. In the film, it's the other way around. But the Bedso scene where he's in the car, as written in the script, he's spilling his coffee whilst trying to put headache pills into a bottle of water.
Right, exactly.
Because he's still hungover from the massive night out.
Yeah.
And so even though that didn't come across in the film at all, in my mind, Bedso is just completely hungover there, having the worst day. And so that's why I always think we'll see that scene. So I want that scene in there.
Yeah.
I want to keep the backflips because they're ridiculous, but it works with the film. It works with the visual style of the film. And I think other than that, I think my cut is the international cut with just those little extra bits here and there.
Yeah, I have to say, I think I agree. It's very dull to say. I couldn't lose anything like you. I'd keep the backflips anyway. I'll go back and forth on the wires. Maybe I'd take them out.
Yeah.
Maybe, it wouldn't hurt to do that. But yeah, I think absolutely I would keep the Bedso stuff in. If for no other reason than to kind of pay homage to the character he played when he was acting in that movie that we didn't get to see. There was of all the stuff that was cut, so much more than we thought before. The scene in the antique store, the scene, basically in Central Park watching McLeod meet Castigier, then the scene in the bar. Then you've got the thing with the fish tank at the end as well. Like, he had this character arc, he had this huge thing.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, the poor guy was reduced to a bit part. So
he got Rachel'd.
Yeah, exactly.
At least he didn't blow up in a sequel.
Well, no, that's true. I know. Oh, shame. But yeah, no, definitely. So if for no other reason, it would be nice to sort of see that scene back in there. Because again, there's never been a version that has all those bits in it from the international cut that has that in it too.
Not as far as we know.
No, well, yeah, exactly. That we've all seen. So let's get that.
Hopefully, someday we'll be sitting here discussing, the 70mm version in detail.
We will.
If it ever turns up again.
It will happen. It will happen.
Yeah.
well, look, Ewan, thank you. It's been fascinating.
No problem.
I'm sure anybody who's still watching found it fascinating. It's been fantastic. Thank you. And we will no doubt be doing something very similar again because you are just an amazing mental resource of all that is Highlander, and I love it. But also you're great to have on. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. And with that, I'll say thank you to everyone for watching, and we'll be back in soon. Until then, hold fast.
And don't lose your head.